Hey guys!
I'm sure we've all read The Great Gatsby in some capacity, whether it's for a college course, a high school class, or for middle school class, if you're a preppy like that.
Or you just watched the movie, or read the Spark Notes, which we didn't do.
Clearly, based on this video. Today we'll be analyzing the 2013 movie, along with the chapters of the book, and the 2024 musical.
Let's get into it!
Chapter 1.
We meet our main character, Nick Carraway, the narrator of this book. He's just moved from the Middle East to West Egg, Long Island after the war ended. He ends up living next to the mysterious Jay Gatsby, who we don't know much about. He goes to visit his second cousin Daisy and her husband Tom. Along with that, we meet Jordan Baker, an amateur golfer. And we learn about Tom's affair.
In the beginning of Chapter 1, we learn a lot about Nick and his interaction with his family. Nick comes from old money, and so does the rest of his family, such as Daisy, his second cousin. We also learn about how Nick was taught to treat others with kindness and to have humility about his money, which is something that new money apparently doesn't understand, which is developed throughout the book.
It's very apparent through Nick's narration that he's not very close to Tom or Daisy and really only goes to visit them as a courtesy because he just moved across the bay from them and they're the only people he knows.
Towards the end of the chapter, we learn about Tom's affair with Myrtle, although we don't know her name until much later. Another important factor of this chapter in the book is that we do not know who Jordan is until the end-ish of the chapter. We are just introduced to her as a pretty lady, and Nick doesn't know who she is explicitly. In comparison to the movie.
We're told who Jordan is immediately. She's introduced by Daisy immediately as Jordan Baker, an amateur golfer.
Which kind of loses its significance because Nick says that she seems familiar, and he doesn't understand why she seems familiar until her name is later revealed. Which seems more important in the book than it is treated in the movie.
Yeah. And the beginning of this chapter in the movie starts with a green light getting slowly closer and closer, and then Nick talking to a psychiatrist rather than writing.
It kind of loses the writing significance, especially because in the book it feels like Nick is talking to us because he needs to get it out. He is using it as an outlet instead of becoming an alcoholic. Whereas in the movie, it is explicitly stated on papers at the beginning that he is an insomniac, an alcoholic, he is prone to fits of anger, he's a very irrational person, and it's kind of hard to empathize with him when you know that initially.
Tom's affair in the movie is alluded to as Nick is introducing him, which isn't extremely important, but I do think it's slightly weird because it's supposed to be a bit of a shock to Nick, though in the book he doesn't even react that hard.
Another strange detail that they tweaked in the movie is that Daisy is his first cousin and not his second cousin, and they push this closeness to Daisy and Tom, where Tom is immediately friendly with Nick and Daisy is immediately all over Nick in a very odd way, which is in the book, but it would make more sense for people who don't actually see themselves as direct family.
She calls him Nicky in the movie, which totally caught me off guard while we were watching it. It's extremely apparent in the book that they are not that close.
It also kind of trains a lot of the later exposure to how weird this society is, where if he was already this close with Daisy and Tom, he would have had more insight. He would have had more
that they're
insight,
not good people.
Yeah, into like, oh, maybe something bad's gonna happen with them. Maybe they're both having affairs. Like, it kind of...
And it would also taint his perception of Gatsby, I feel like.
Yeah, because he would know how weird and messed up the inside of this is. Yeah. Whereas in the book, it's not as alluded to. He doesn't know as much. He's not as close to them. And it makes, like, way more sense for him to be so caught off guard later. Nick, in general, in the movie, is just substantially, like, less and way too much at the same time.
Yeah, he's so unopinionated, but then opinionated about the wrong things, if that makes sense. Like, some of the narration they picked feels out of place. Like, to Jordan, he's like, she's the most frightening woman I had ever seen, when he doesn't really have that reaction to her at all in the book. He's more just like, oh, lady on the couch.
Yeah, and he finds her more intimidatingly hot than anything, but he's
more
not
interested than
anything.
put off.
Whereas in the movie, he's much more, like, he's a lot more timid and antsy, and I think that it kind of swaps Nick and Gatsby's personalities a little bit, where Gatsby is this big outgoing guy in the movie, where in the book he's kind of more
Recluse.
he's more mysterious and laid
Recluse.
back, because he's trying to put on this brave face for everyone, but he's more relaxed with Nick, which we don't see their connection at all in the movie, which we'll get more into later.
A lot of what I'll go into here specifically is a lot of the, like, mystery is taken away based on the characters' reactions to things that are said. Like, when Jordan Baker brings up Jay Gatsby to Nick while they're at dinner with Tom and Daisy, Daisy's reaction to Gatsby is...
What Gatsby?
Like, and she has this, like, longing look in her eyes, and I feel like we definitely need some of that, like, Nick knows something's up by her delivery in the book, but the camera shot we get, and her tone of voice, and just, we know something is up too much.
Yeah,
it's too obvious.
It feels more like a deliberate rom-com kind of, I used to know a man by the name of Gatsby, instead of, like, cool, mysterious, like, which one? You know?
Who?
It's
like,
a lot.
It feels obvious that, like, they knew each other rather than, like, maybe Daisy's just heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we should question... That's a better way of saying it. We should question why Daisy might know him. But even having read the book, I feel like if I hadn't read the book, I'd immediately be like, oh, they were lovers.
Yeah.
Her reaction is, like, immediately, they were lovers.
Yeah, it was immediately like, I used to know a man. Like
rom-com, like you said.
Yeah, it's very rom-com, romancy, whereas in the book it's more focused on Nick's perspective.
Yeah.
Which we've gone over in class, may I add. Nick's perspective is so important to the delivery of this book. The movie makes it seem as if it's just some third party watching. It is not
Even
necessarily...
though we have Nick's narration, it still feels like that, which is... How do you do that?
It's so weird, and they'll use the exact same dialogue as the book does, but in a different order to make it...
They'll mash it up.
They take the words from a certain scene, and then they just, like,
flip it,
put it in a pot, and stir it all around, and then just pick one, and then they put it there, and then they pick one, and then they put it there, and it's like...
And it makes sense while you're watching, but it's also like, you could have just taken the dialogue from the book, because you were already doing that.
Yeah, they could have taken it directly, which probably would have translated better.
This is especially apparent in chapter 3, which we'll get into. Tom and Daisy's confrontation feels rushed, and maybe that's just because we're not getting all of Nick's narration. But even if we weren't, it still feels rushed.
It's the scene where Daisy walks in to talk to Tom about him getting a call from his mistress.
Yeah.
She knows that he's cheating. He knows that she knows. And they're having an argument in the other room. But it's so rushed.
It doesn't feel that deep.
It feels like, I think I could understand from Nick's perspective not caring that much.
Yeah.
And if that's the direction that they were going, it would have played a lot better.
Yeah. And
if it had been lacking because he just didn't care.
And the thing with that is they're sitting on, like, basically like a patio kind of, and all of the, like, doors and windows, well, the windows obviously are, like, glass, so we can see Tom and Daisy arguing, which I not necessarily that that's a direction they shouldn't have done, but it makes it feel even more rushed because we see them arguing. And Jordan and Nick in the book, it feels like they sit in a long silence for a little bit before Nick tries to say something to Jordan, and Jordan's like, shh, I want to hear what's going on.
Versus in the book, it's like and we'll get more into this, in other parts of the book, or in the movie, in other parts of the movie, they will completely ignore Nick. They will go into a scene that Nick was never in. And if they did that with this argument, it would make more sense thematically for the movie. For the way that the movie is shot throughout the entire time, they do the exact same thing where they ignore Nick and they go to this scene and then they come back to Nick. But for some reason, in this scene, they don't. And it makes it seem just like clobbered together to get it in there, to make sure that you know, that Daisy knows, that Tom knows, that Jordan knows, that everybody in the room knows that Tom is having an affair. You know that Tom is having an affair.
And they want you to know.
You have to know that Tom is having an affair.
It's like in kids shows where they repeat something over and over again.
Do you see Tom's affair?
Do you see?
It is shoved directly in your face, but it's still in the background. And it's
weird.
such a weird direction to give your audience.
Anyway, after this, we get Daisy and Nick's usual scene of, like, walking through the garden and chatting. And again, and what also makes this weird is in this scene, it feels like they aren't that close the way they are talking, how it is in the book. And it's like, Nick has never met Daisy's daughter because he was A, at war, B, they're not very close. And this scene, the dialogue basically goes the same, but then after their scene is concluded, we get a long shot from Daisy's house to the green light across the bay, or a green light, it's in front of her house, and then we get a shot across the bay to Gatsby's dock, and we see Gatsby standing there in the dark, blacked out.
It is such a weird shot.
It's cool for another movie.
But not this one, not this scene.
Because why would we have that perspective? This is from Nick's perspective.
It feels like they wrote it for Nick and Gatsby to be deuteragonists. Which, if you don't know, just means that there are two main characters and they share an equal amount of spotlight. Which is an interesting concept. But they're also trying to replicate this book the exact same. They take dialogue exactly. So when I see dialogue exactly, I expect the book to be replicated almost exactly, instead of making deuteragonists, which isn't in the book.
And to go back to our point about the narration, Nick, is telling this to a psychiatrist and then later writing, which we'll get into. So having shots like that is weird, because if you were either commit to the fact that Nick is narrating or don't commit to the fact that Nick is narrating. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 1.
Side note on the green light, it is so obnoxious to me.
It is abused.
It is abused, overused, and
overworked. We see it 3 times in the book. We see it at the end of chapter 1. We get it mentioned to Daisy. And then we get it one more time that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But we get it 3 times. We didn't count. We should have, how many times we saw it in this movie. But it was at least 6 or 7 times.
It was an obnoxious amount. I understand that they're trying to make you think more about this.
And I love an illusion. I love a callback.
I do too.
I love a callback.
They do so many moments in this movie where you're like, that's gonna be important, and that's okay. It's just not how the book was written. And I understand books and movies, completely different mediums, it's different writing.
They're gonna translate different.
But the way that they do it...
Make it intentionally translate different.
Even when I had already read the book, I could tell that while we were watching the movie, I could point at a scene and be like, that's going to be important later. It doesn't matter if they had already referenced it in the book or not. I could tell that even if I hadn't ever read the book, I could point at that scene and understand this is going to be important later, this is going to be important later, this is going to be important later. That's not very fun from an audience perspective. It's not fun to be like, oh, that's gonna be important later. Oh, and so is that, and so is that, and so is that, over and over again.
It's good to have things that are, like, obviously going to be important, because you want the audience to remember that for later. Or at least, but, like, the way they do it, it's like, you want it to be obvious that it's important, but you don't want it to be so obvious that we already know why.
Yeah, it's like, oh, green light,
Daisy.
Gatsby.
Yeah.
Daisy goes, what Gatsby? It's like, oh wow, they love each other. Anyways,
End of
chapter 1.
Chapter 2 introduces us to the Valley Bashes, a wasteland in New York City. Tom takes Nick out to New York City from Long Island to meet his mistress, Myrtle. We meet Myrtle along with first meeting her husband in his garage. His name is Wilson. Myrtle Wilson. They go to Tom and Myrtle's affair apartment, and they throw a party, essentially. A rager, if you will, because it's the Roaring 20s. The events are told through Nick, who is an unreliable narrator throughout the whole book, to be honest, but especially in this chapter because he is wasted.
Yes. Chapter 2 begins with Tom bringing Nick to the Valley of Ashes, which is some rickety old hood town in New York.
The poor people.
The poor people.
The middle class.
Tom brings Nick with him to visit his affair partner, which then leads into their apartment scene. Tom bringing Nick in the book makes sense, because in the book it's paced as if they had known each other for like a while at this point, where chapter 1 happened and then time skip chapter 2. What happens in the movie is not that. It's paced as if it's like maybe a few days later, like the next weekend or something. And it's still pushing this like,
they're close.
Oh, you're really close with Tom, Nick. Oh, Nick and Tom, they're best buds.
They're buddies.
When Nick hates Tom, Nick hates that guy in the book, and they're like this in the movie. And it's really disturbing when Nick is supposed to be this super awesome, unracist, awesome guy, but Tom is super racist, and they're just like hanging out, like with the crap.
In the book, it's like Tom dragging Nick around, and Nick is just too nice. Or polite, at the very least, to forcefully be like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, when he's trying to leave the apartment in the book, he keeps trying to leave and then keeps getting coerced to say, because of the booze, too, but part of it is because he's too polite.
Whereas in the movie, he's like, oh, I guess if you're begging me to stay, I'll stay, if you insist. Whereas in the book, it's more relaxed, and Nick is like, kind of like,
I don't feel like my eyeballs are being stabbed. It's another thing to note, every party scene in this movie is so overstimulating. Like, from a point, I do understand. We are supposed to understand that these parties are crazy. But but they're not even playing 1920s music, and I feel like they should be.
They should be playing 1920s music. They play, like, Kanye West. What is happening?
Stop it!
Like, what is happening? Into the apartment scene, if you would like to do the honors.
Like I said, in the movie, it's so overstimulating. When in the book, it feels like they're partying, but they're partying a lot calmer. Like, in the movie, they're, like, breaking feather pillows, and they're running around, and, like, yes, and, like, Myrtle and Tom do sneak off to go have sex. But, like, sneak off. And, like, Nick, but, like, it just feels so much more slower paced and digestible in the book, like we said, versus how they do it in the movie. And we don't get Nick talking to Mr. McKee, like, basically at all. We don't get the queer illusion at the end that they may have slept together. We don't get the elevator scene when Nick and Mr. McKee decide to leave.
It's very strange. The things that they cut and the things that they include kind of just feel like they were trying to make it a more raunchy 2010s movie instead of raunchy rom-com comedy mystery Instead, true to the original, like, mystery kind of slow burn, if there's romance at all, where it's, even when there's romance, it's kind of just alluded to. A few other things that I'm going to point out before we move to chapter 3, I think, is that Nick is, in the movie, for starters, he is just dragged to the apartment immediately. From the garage to the apartment. We don't see Streets of Manhattan at all, which is such an important part of the book.
We don't see him getting the dog, which is less important, to be honest, but, like, the Streets of Manhattan is important.
It is such a good growth moment for our,
perception.
I said that weird. Our perception is so developed by those street scenes, where there are none in the movie. There's also a weird allusion to, again, forcing Nick to be closer with Daisy, where in the movie he says, "I'm not comfortable here, Daisy's my cousin." Which, in the book, he says something similar, he just wants to get out, though.
And also, this is not super related to what we've been talking about, but it is in this chapter for the movie. Nick says, it feels like Gatsby was always watching me, which is a weird thing to add, because it's not something A, he says in the book, or B, he feels in the book in any capacity.
They're just trying to make Gatsby more mysterious on the front end, so that by the end, you still feel like he's mysterious, but he's not. Chapter 3.
Nick observes Gatsby's wild weekend parties from afar, still having to yet meet Jay Gatsby, his wealthy neighbor. He is given a rare personal invitation to one of Gatsby's parties and decides to attend. He later he runs into Jordan Baker at the party, and they hang out, and both listen to wild rumors about their host, and eventually actually meet their host, who is aloof and doesn't often actually interact with his guests.
At the beginning of chapter 3, we are first seeing Nick experience Gatsby from afar, which is very... It's very faithful in both the book and the movie to him looking at something that, like, it's big and flashy and gaudy, which is something that he's not used to as someone with old money, and he's like, that Gatsby? No money. Like, we see a lot of, like, weird commentary in the movie that we don't see in the book, especially around Gatsby's characterization, which is going to be more towards the end of the chapter. So, middle of the chapter?
A lot of this chapter is spent with Nick, like, observing the party and drinking, and him and Jordan Baker talking, but a lot of it is Nick looking for Jay Gatsby, and then subsequently hearing rumors, like he was a spy for the Germans, he was a spy for the US, rumors to how he got his money, stuff like that. The dialogue, like we were saying, is, like, spliced up and just, like, tossed into a hat and pulled out. And a piece of dialogue that caught my ear was Jordan Baker's, like, a friend, acquaintance, the guy she's there with, tells Nick, as he's, like, tugging Jordan away, poor boys don't marry rich girls, which is odd because Nick is rich, and also that's just not said to him in the book. That is a Gatsby and Daisy thing. And him and Jordan aren't even involved in the movie, which we will get into, because that is weird.
There is no Nick and Jordan, like, getting all cozy kind of scene, which we do see in the book. There's none of that in the movie. They skip over that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
They don't even seem interested in each other.
But they don't even seem interested in each other. It is such a weird thing to exclude. I understand maybe wanting to focus on the other romances and, like, the drama, but that is part of the drama.
But
Nick is inserting himself into all of this drama, and him and Jordan are, like, all of a sudden in the middle of it also, where we don't get that as much in the movie because they aren't as romantically involved, if at all. Chapter 4.
Gatsby and Nick go out to lunch, and on the way there, in Gatsby's yellow Rolls Royce, he talks about his past and is basically trying to clear up the rumors everyone says about him. Nick meets Gatsby's shady business associate at lunch, Wolfsheim. Later, Jordan and Nick go out to tea, per Gatsby's request, and Jordan goes into, like, her past with Daisy a little bit, but specifically the fact that Jay and Daisy were a couple 5 years ago, before Gatsby went off to war, and Jay wants Nick to invite Daisy over for tea at his place, so Jay could happen to show up, and he could talk to her. And then Nick and Jordan kiss at the end of the book.
End of the chapter, not the end of the book. We're not there yet. I personally don't like how I know I sing the book's praises. I don't like how chapter 4 is written in the book or in the movie. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if our first connection to Gatsby's weird past was maybe chapter 5 or chapter 6. I think it's a little too soon for my personal taste, because we still don't know Gatsby. We've heard rumors, he's trying to clear up rumors all of a sudden, and then we're, like, immediately dropped into, oh wait, so he just cleared the air to make him seem like a good guy. He's a bad guy.
But he's also still lying.
He's such an iffy character at this point in the book, and I understand that that's intentional, but it makes him unlikable for a second, which is odd because it's from Nick's perspective, and the entire book, Nick is singing Gatsby's good grace. It is very lackluster, especially in the movie. This scene is so, like, in your face. Gatsby's lying.
Yeah, Nick literally says that. Nick is literally like, the way he speaks, no wonder everyone thinks he's lying. He can't possibly think I believe him.
Yeah.
In both the movie and the book. So, they go out to lunch, and Wolfsheim, Gatsby's shady business associate, is there, though Nick doesn't really know that yet.
I don't know if we wrote this down. Yeah, we did.
They're in a club in the movie.
They're in a club.
They're just out to lunch in the book.
Maybe we forgot. But they're in a club, and he had little molars on his cuffs, because he's a bad guy, and he has teeth for some reason. Why is it? It's on his tie.
And it's
a tie
ginormous, by the way. It's not
It is-
tooth-sized.
It is like shark tooth level big. Just smack dab right there. Like he's wearing it close to his heart. Like what? It's supposed to be like a. He's.
You notice it.
You notice it enough. It's threatening because he's not trying to show it off. He's trying to show it off. He's trying to show
Got like
you
a
that
ribbon around it.
Yeah, it's like encased in gold, and he's like, "You noticed my molar, huh?" It's like it's
Real
not
specimen of human molar.
human molar. It's like it's so unthreatening because he's trying so hard to feel threatening.
And again, with the club, it's so overstimulating. Like, it's not as bad as the party scenes, but I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. When Gatsby and Tom, they meet each other in the book, because, like you said, Tom, like, goes there, and him and Nick say hi, because they know each other. And Gatsby in the book is uncomfortable when he is, like, uncomfortable and, like, shakes Tom's hand and is like, hi, I'm Jay Gatsby. But in the movie, this happens, but he looks so angry. He looks uncomfortable in the movie, don't get me wrong, but he looks angry.
Just a general comment. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was horrible casting for Gatsby. It's like he's insecure, so he's putting on an even bigger face.
Yeah.
But he's also so angry all the time that he kind of just feels like a spiteful man, which is not how he's played. He's a hopeful romantic,
Yeah.
and he's insecure, and he's relatable in the book.
And in chapter 3, we get that paragraph of, and in the movie we get this, Nick being like, when Gatsby, like, is introducing himself, and he, like, smiles at him, he's like, it's a smile that you feel like understands you immediately, like, all your problems have been washed away. He's, like, acting like this cool guy for some reason, and he kind of acts like that in the book, but it comes off as very nonchalant, where in this book it's like, ooh, in your face, tough guy.
In this book. In the movie.
In the movie, sorry. And then we get to Jordan and Nick going out to tea together, and Nick, like, immediately, like, rushes into where they are, like, on a balcony, and is like, what's going on? Starts, like, interrogating her, and I don't think he does that in the book. Like, he kind of does it in the book, but not this intensely.
Yeah, I feel like
he doesn't cause a public scene in the book.
No. Nick is very modest, rich, old money, where he doesn't like causing scenes.
Yeah. Anyway, Jordan launches into, like, how she knows Gatsby and how Daisy knows Gatsby. Like, she's golfing, Daisy waves at her, Gatsby's in the car with Daisy, and it's clear that they're in love and stuff, and Jordan, like, talks about, like, how Daisy, in the book and the movie, talks about how, like, Daisy, like, Gatsby goes off to war, and so him and Daisy, like, they write each other letters and stuff, but eventually, a year later, Daisy marries Tom Buchanan because money, and because she's young and a socialite and she needs to get married, and it says specifically in the movie, for some unknown reason, Gatsby couldn't return, which isn't a thing in the book. He's just at war in the book.
They also do this weird, like, age and time thing where they mention, like, by number that Gatsby is, like, 32.
Yeah.
We're in the book,
and we know
he's
it's been
younger than that.
He's, like, and it's, like, pretty sure it's specifically mentioned in this chapter that, like, Gatsby, in the chapter, that Gatsby's, like, 18 when he goes off to war, and we know for a fact that it's been almost 5 years since him and Daisy have seen each other, because at one point in both the book and the movie, he goes, it'll be 5 years in November. And
the
it's the
musical
summer.
does that too, right?
Yes.
The musical also does that.
Yeah.
All three do that. That's so important. It's
Yeah.
almost 5 years.
Yeah, so he'd be, like, 23.
They age everyone up, but they keep the dates. So there's, like, this weird blip between war and now that doesn't line up at all. It's very strange.
And at the end of this chapter, Jordan and Nick get in the cab still, but they don't kiss
Again,
or look at each other like they like each other at all.
No, they just completely erased their romance, which is cool, but it was like...
They erased Jordan being important at all, basically.
Jordan could have not been in this movie.
And it would not have made a difference.
She could have not existed, and it would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah, the only thing that wouldn't happen is we wouldn't know about specifically Daisy and Gatsby's past, but Gatsby also could have just told Nick that. So in chapter 5, Nick agrees to help Gatsby reunite with Daisy. The two meet at Nick's house, and they reunite, and it's tense and awkward, obviously.
Yeah.
And the two reconnect, and Gatsby happily shows off his wealth to Daisy, because they go to his home. And it's very prevalent at the end that Gatsby is desperate to recapture his past with Daisy by all means necessary.
This chapter is lame. Especially in the movie. It's like...
It's okay in the book. It's fine in the book. It makes sense in the book.
It does. And it's
like,
not...
It's awkward in both the movie and the book. But, like,
and it's important.
It's meant to be.
It's this romancy, like...
Nick is just observing.
Nick is just observing as Daisy and Gatsby basically get it on in front of him. They're being very cutesy, they're falling back in love, they're starting kind of an affair. They start an explicit affair in the book. And I guess they do it in the movie too. They do it a lot in the movie.
The movie is pretty faithful to the book in this, so we didn't really comment on much, besides there was no pink cloud scene.
It is, like, probably my favorite line in the book, just because it's so strange. Daisy says, "Oh, look at those nice pink clouds. I just want to put you in one and push you around on it." And she's being all weird. And it's like, it feels out of character and out of nowhere. And in the movie, they don't do it, and it made me sad, because I was like, there's no pink cloud scene.
Anyway, it's pretty faithful. The throwing shirts is pretty much exactly how I imagined it. Them not spotting the green light across the bay, but, like, Jay pointing it out that it should be there because, like, the mist is there so they can't see it. Pretty faithful, pretty much how I imagined it.
They changed the organ scene slightly. They just rearranged the dialogue, and those are the two changes that I remember.
Gatsby's also watching that like a freak.
Yeah.
He's like laid out on the couch with wine or something. Like,
I like how Nick tried to escape the party earlier because he was uncomfortable because he was Daisy's cousin, because he didn't want to watch Tom and Myrtle get it on, but he was sat for Daisy and Gatsby. I think he has a crush on Gatsby.
they should have kissed in the musical.
Oh, in the musical, yeah. Chapter 6.
Nick tells us about Jay Gatsby's origin as James Gatz, because Gatsby relates this to him. Jay Gatsby, was a poor guy who reinvented himself after meeting the wealthy Dan Cody. Tom and Daisy attend Gatsby's party, and Gatsby and Daisy get some alone time after Tom goes off. Gatsby laments about how Daisy didn't have a good time, and Nick fails to understand him in that regard. And they talk about how Gatsby is like, you can't recapture the past. What do you mean? Of course you can.
Chapter 6, in its beginning, it started a lot different in the movie than it did in the book, where for a second we weren't sure whether or not Chapter 6 had started.
Yeah.
Because in the book, it starts with Nick. It starts with Nick.
He starts telling us immediately.
Yeah.
Essentially.
He immediately starts telling us, but he's telling us about a conversation with Gatsby.
Yeah.
And then he goes into Gatsby's perspective, which is similar to the movie, but there is a long shot of Nick talking to the psychiatrist, I think.
That was just not, obviously, just not in the book, because he's not talking to the psychiatrist in the book.
It felt like they really wanted that in there, and then they kind of cramped everything else around it. It was very strange. And then in particular, this isn't about the beginning of the chapter, but Chapter 6 dialogue, as far as the movie goes, was
like Chapter 3.
Everywhere.
Like Chapter 3. It was everywhere. To the point where we were like, we read the book and we were like, did this happen?
Over and over again, especially
we
in
had
Chapter 6.
to go back in the book and be like, yeah, they did say that, but like 10 pages later.
Or it was like 5 pages too early, and it was like, what in
just
the world
write
is
it
happening?
normally.
It was very
Obviously,
strange.
the dialogue flows well enough for you to take it straight from the book. There was a point where Daisy like mentioned the drugstores, and I was like, does she do that in the book? And we were like, no, and we wrote it down as a note, and then we were flipping through the book again, and we were like, yes, she does.
Except she does it at like the end of the chapter instead of at the beginning of the chapter. It's such an odd switch. In the book, we get an explanation of Gatsby's relationship with Cody as like, it was more sparse in the book, I think.
It was a little bit more difficult to understand, if you will.
I like that the movie like went more in depth about that. I do think that that's something the movie does really well, is go in depth about things that I was confused about in the book.
Yeah.
I think it does a good job about that. But then anything that was clear in the book, they're like, let's hopscotch around that and you can figure it out. The weird thing about the movie is that they imply so
Gatsby
hard.
killed Cody's family.
They implied that Gatsby did it, which he might have.
Because they go. Gatsby was, I'm like paraphrasing here, but Gatsby was hoping to inherit Dan Cody's wealth when he passed, but it was ultimately scammed out of it by Cody's family. So where did Gatsby get all his money? And it cuts from like Dan and Gatsby on the boat together to like one of Gatsby's parties and Gatsby menacingly turning around, and like there's newspapers
Of like, Cody family
Dead.
fortune missing, goes to Gatsby. Why?
Dead.
It's like, they're all dead. And I think it could have been implied in the book as well.
Anything obviously implied in the movie was like subtext in the book.
It's very interesting, and I think particularly the fact that, like, in the book, I didn't even think that, like, I didn't think for a second that book Gatsby would do that. Movie Gatsby would kill anyone he wanted to.
In the book, I did believe Gatsby would do some malicious stuff, but it's more like other people are doing the malicious stuff for him, if you
Yeah.
will, like Wolfsheim, because he wants...
He's got guys for that.
Yeah, he wants to be somebody, and he will do pretty much anything to do that, and to be somebody to him means to have Daisy. Movie Gatsby felt like that, but it felt like more like a manipulative obsession with Daisy, rather than like this, like, I don't want to say like broken man.
Broken man.
Like, he wants that past with Daisy, and he doesn't like, Daisy is the object of his desire, because once he has Daisy, his, like, what he's wealthy, he's well-known, he needs Daisy as his wife, and then he is set. Nick's relationship with Gatsby is severely, like, lacking.
It is so lacking. Like, it feels like Nick shouldn't tell this story.
Yeah, it feels like, why would this guy write about this guy who knew for 3 months?
And at the beginning, he literally says, the psychiatrist is like, who was Gatsby to you? And he was like, and the psychiatrist was like, a friend? And I made the joke, it was like, worse, a lover. But then Nick said, a neighbor. No, he wasn't. He was like your best friend for like multiple months at least. Like, you guys were like, if anyone should have been like this with Nick, it should have been Gatsby.
Why was it Tom?
They were so close in the book. They were thick as thieves.
Not even necessarily, like, the way they wrote Tom and Nick in the movie isn't how I would want, like, the relationship for Nick and Gatsby to be, but they just feel like strangers in the movie.
It doesn't make sense for Gatsby to tell Nick all of this. He shouldn't trust
Not
Nick.
in the movie.
He shouldn't trust Nick in the movie. He should not trust him with this information yet.
He's
There's
too close to Tom.
There's no development. His only relationship to Nick is the fact that he's helping him get with Daisy. Nick is just a means to an end in the movie, which is why it's so weird that Nick is telling the story. Gatsby is telling him all of this information. Gatsby's bringing him out to meet all of his, like, evil buddies. I don't know what else to call them. But, like, his gang members. It's so weird. It is so weird.
So in this chapter is the climax. Tom, Daisy, Jordan, Nick, and Gatsby all have lunch together, and then they decide to go into the city. They end up at a hotel, and they start drinking, and Tom confronts Gatsby about, like, where his wealth came from and how he knows Daisy, to which Gatsby responds by revealing him and Daisy's affair. Daisy and Gatsby leave together, and Daisy is the one driving, and she is shaken up and ends up accidentally killing Tom's mistress, Myrtle.
The beginning of this, in both the book and the movie, I believe, is relatively similar.
Yeah.
They're
at Tom and Daisy's.
They're hanging out. But the way that Gatsby is played in this scene,
He's so mad.
he's so upset and trying to be nonchalant at the same time.
Doesn't read.
It doesn't work. The entire argument is low stakes for such a high stakes moment. Tom feels emotionless. He's just mad. In the book, we both read it as Tom is breaking. This is his breaking point.
This is the only time I felt bad for Tom at all. The only time I felt bad for Tom in the book at all was when Gatsby is convinced Daisy to tell Tom that she never loved him, and she says, "I never loved him," and Tom goes, "Even when I carried you from the beach so your shoes wouldn't get wet." And that is the only time I felt anything for Tom, and I felt nothing while we were watching the movie. Nothing. He was so, like, either angry or emotionless. And Gatsby was so angry, and in the book, I read him as he's trying to convince himself as much as he's trying to convince Daisy that she never loved Tom. Like, I read him as, like, go on, tell him you never loved him.
Yeah,
because he's trying to believe it.
He's insecure. He's so
He needs
insecure
her
in
to
the
never
book.
have loved Tom.
He needs her to have only ever loved him because otherwise he'll never be happy with himself. In the movie, it's just read. It's like
He's just angry.
he's mad and he's smug about it, and it like makes me really upset because I really loved Gatsby in the book. Like, he's such a bad person objectively, but he's such a good character and he's so human and relatable, and that's the whole point of why Nick liked him, is because
He's hopeful.
he wasn't tainted, or he was so tainted that he like still could have gotten out of it. He just got trapped.
Yeah. It's just, it reads there. I know we've said it so much, but it reads so poorly because Gatsby's just no other emotion but mad. It's like, this feels like both Tom and Gatsby's breaking point in a way, and it just doesn't read like that at all. They split up. Gatsby and Daisy go in Gatsby's car, and they're driving back, and Nick hangs back with Tom and Jordan, and they like have a conversation that, to be honest, doesn't really matter in the book or the movie, to be completely honest. Nick's just like, it's my birthday, and Tom's like, well, happy birthday.
Yeah.
which the well, happy birthday doesn't happen in the book, but it happens in the movie.
It's very funny.
They drive back and in the book, and they like see cop cars and a woman's body on the side of the road, and it turns out to be Myrtle.
In the book, it's Nick's perspective first, which makes sense. If Nick is telling us the story, Nick's perspective first makes sense. The way they do it in the movie is the opposite. They show us Gatsby and Daisy in the car, and they show us like 3 different perspectives. They first show us what Gatsby is presumably telling Nick what happened, where Gatsby was driving and then he accidentally hit Myrtle because some other car was out of control or something.
Yeah, and they know it's a yellow car because it's a bright yellow car.
Yeah.
And then Nick, Tom, and Jordan are immediately like, oh, it's Gatsby's car. They don't say that, but they know it in their little heads. Oh, also, earlier in this chapter, Tom, Nick and Jordan are the ones in Gatsby's car, and they stop to get gas at Wilson's, and Tom, in the book, is like, yeah, this is my new car, just got her last week or something. And he doesn't do that in the movie, and it's not, like, super duper important, but it's a little bit important, because Tom is, like, when he hears that it's a yellow car, is flustered, because he had just told Wilson that's his car.
And he's scared that he's gonna get blamed for it. Versus the movie, that doesn't really happen.
Mm-hmm.
And another, just to add on to like the weird perspective thing, it goes from Gatsby's perspective to then what actually happened, where it was Daisy driving the car, and then we get Nick's perspective. And the way it's ordered,
like, we get the flash. Gatsby's like, we don't know it's Gatsby's flashback, but we get what would be Gatsby's flashback. Nick and Tom and Jordan seeing like the cop cars and what's on the side of the road, to the conversation that Nick and Gatsby have about what happens, and then Gatsby tells us what happens. So basically, it should have been Nick, Gatsby talking, flashback, but it was flashback, Nick, Gatsby talking.
It was insanely strange. Chapter 7, I think we're gonna lump in with Chapter 8.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna do that right here.
Basically, Gatsby tells Nick about his past with Daisy. He's still convinced that she only ever loved him. Wilson is broken and distraught about Myrtle's death, and he seeks revenge against Gatsby because Tom, like, told him it was Gatsby whose car. And Wilson murders Gatsby before committing suicide.
Gatsby's death is not treated well.
It's not emotional at all.
It's not emotional. It's like, and when Nick is talking about it, he's like, and then my neighbor's dead.
And then he's dead.
Oh well.
It's just like, again, I'm so sorry, so many of my comments are just, it's weird. But like, why is it in slow-mo?
I think...
And also, it's how it's read in the book is you're not sure that Gatsby's dead until chapter 9.
Mm-hmm.
You know Wilson is dead because it says Wilson's body a little off in the grass, and the Holocaust was complete. So, like, we know Wilson is dead, probably, because it says body. But you're not, like, sure that Gatsby is dead. Until after 2 years, I remember the rest of that day and night, and then the next day. Only in this drill of police and photographers and newsmen all at Gatsby's front door. And then it, like, talks about how he's planning the funeral and stuff.
Even if Gatsby and Nick's relationship wasn't intended to be romantic, it was romanticized in the book. Not, like, in the stereotypical, like, romance way.
They were in love.
But they were such...
It's like how people romanticize, like, media.
Yeah. Like, they were objectively a very close... They were very close to each other.
For how little time they knew each other.
This is Nick's ode to Gatsby. This is what this book is.
It's called The Great Gatsby.
He
named it after Gatsby.
This book is an ode to Gatsby. It's his what is it called? An elegy? It's his elegy to Gatsby.
It's his, like, final recounting. It's his way to remember Jay Gatsby as Jay Gatsby, the way he wanted to be remembered.
And it's
rather than
helping
James
all of
Gatz.
us remember Jay Gatsby as well. And it is so
he's not dead he's immortalized forever in this book.
Yeah. And in the movie, it's not that. It's just another 2010s movie to watch.
It's another day for Nick Carraway. It was just another summer for Nick Carraway. Jordan and Nick don't have that final conversation, and Nick and Tom don't have their final conversation either. And immediately as chapter 9 starts in the movie, Nick does his little Tom and Daisy are careless and they don't care about anyone and they just throw everything away. They just throw money at all their problems. He does that at, like, the beginning of chapter 9 in this movie. And in the book, he does it after he talks to Tom. But he doesn't talk to Tom. He's, like, sitting on Gatsby's stairs. Gatsby's body in a casket. Policemen everywhere. And, like, we don't see Gatsby's dad either. I can't remember if we see Owl Eyes or not in the movie, but Gatsby's dad is not there. And he's there in the book, and he calls Gatsby Jimmy because he knows him as James Gatz. So the people that are, like, supposed to be at his funeral remember, like, James Gatz, and, like, Nick and Owl Eyes, like, know that he is James Gatz, and Jay Gatsby was just, like, an illusion to who he wanted to be.
The ending is so cliche movie. And it really, anything that they set up, all of those, like, this is going to be important, this is going to be important, it doesn't feel important at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Which is the worst part.
Nick being like, I can't live here anymore, I feel disgusting, and then moving back to the Midwest doesn't feel earned.
It doesn't feel deserved at all.
It feels like he already knows Tom and Daisy and Jordan are horrible people.
And that's not explored in the movie. That's not an actual thing. There is no class divide that's really explored. It's just there.
He already knows that they're horrible people and he hangs around them anyways. And, like, he doesn't even know Jordan's a horrible person in the movie, actually. Because we don't see her. She could have not been in the movie. And, like, them not having that final conversation is, like, the final nail in the coffin of her not having to have been in this movie at all.
The entire movie, as a synopsis, it's a demoralizing version of the book. It is dry, and it is hyped up because it's party time, and
Leonardo DiCaprio's in it.
And Leonardo DiCaprio's in it. Oh, and the Spider-Man actor is in it. Did you know that? Did you know the Spider-Man actor
is in it?
Did you know the Spider-Man actor is in it? It's like, it's so in your face and loud, but none of the actual points of the book got across. None of the important English literature that it is known for. None of the reasons that it is in any English class
that it's
ever.
a classic.
There is no reason for this movie to have been made except for they wanted to make
Money,
a
cash
great
grab.
Gatsby movie.
If Scott Fitzgerald would be embarrassed by what you did, Baz Luhrmann.
I think it's musical time.
I think it's musical time.
Musical time!
Musical time!
Are you ready for more of us commenting on famous people?
I'm so
Because
excited.
Jeremy Jordan's in it.
And Eva, I'm so sorry I forgot how to pronounce her last name. So basically, Jack Kelly and Eurydice.
We're not going to go over dialogue. We're mainly going to go off of the big songs, which I think there are 9 of them. There are a ton of songs in this, and small songs and reprises. We're going over one of the reprises, but there's a lot to go over, and the musical is so different from the book. I don't know how we could compare it.
It's also just more interesting to do the songs in general. So it begins with Roaring On, which begins with Nick, obviously, and this is a piece of dialogue I will comment on. He basically starts the musical with saying, "I am one of few honest people I have ever known," which is at the end of chapter 3, normally. And we get, this song is basically like a big intro into New York City life early. Like, people are dancing in the streets, they're singing, we see Gatsby, like, reaching across the bay in this song, and then, obviously, Nick gets his letter to Gatsby's party.
But what's interesting about Roaring On is it should technically be chapter 1, if we were to put it in chronological order. But that is why we didn't put them in the chapters, because a lot of the musical adapts certain parts
to the musical format.
Properly.
In my humble opinion. It doesn't make me want to tear my hair out like the movie does.
And the party scenes are great.
We don't have notes for this, but the next song is Absolute Rose, which is basically the dinner scene with Jordan and Daisy and Tom and Nick. And there's not really, it's basically Daisy's like whole thing of like her like telling you that she's like cynical now, and like she has been everywhere, seen everything, done everything. That's basically what Absolute Rose is. And then we jump into New Money, which is actually would be chapter 3. We skip chapter 2.
So we're going chapter 1, chapter 3.
Yeah, and then chapter 2, chapter 2, chapter 4. But essentially, New Money is like a cabaret 1920s jazz style, which I adore. New Money is genuinely just, it's 5 minutes long and it's so catchy. Gatsby has like the God imagery in it, with like the line, and somewhere high above us you've got Gatsby pulling strings.
Dialogue doesn't make as big of an impact in the musical format because a lot of it ends up in lyricism.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, or even the book, a lot of this couldn't be portrayed as well because there's not as many of those aspects, and you can't be as clever with the lines and as rhyming because it's a little too on the nose.
It's also just easy to make people love music if you've got catchy lyrics. There's a point where Jordan Baker says, "I don't want to live here, but I never want to leave," which is like foreshadowing Nick's future mentality, and is also just like a good representation of how I feel like a lot of people feel.
About the dancing more, there is something so entrancing about the way that they make the stage feel. This is one of our few comments on like the actual stage direction, but throughout every dance number, there's not a spotlight on the main characters. It is all lit up and flashing lights.
People are dancing, and it's hard. It's not like in the movie where it's like it's hard to focus on them. It's hard to focus on them because you are enjoying the background so much, if that makes sense.
The theater performance is just that. It is theater. It translates unbelievably well, whereas movie format doesn't work as well as this. The book is very dramatic and theatric, and you wouldn't really realize that until it's in theater form. Like, it translates well.
Later, Nick is like, so where do we find Gatsby? Can you point him out to me? And Jordan's like, I've never even met him. The man's a mystery. Every night his notoriety grows. I wonder if he's even at the parties he throws. and then immediately goes on to say, I think that it's dandy that he keeps a brandy handy and keeps partying, and like just doesn't care about Nick's question. It's like showing how it's more about what Gatsby can do for his guests rather than like Gatsby himself existing to a person as them.
And even Jordan, who's supposed to be this like she's carrying us through the musical. Jordan is a big part of the musical, and like the opposite of her character in the book, or not in the book, in the movie. Like she's
much more important. New Money is her only like real song,
but she's still such an important facet of the plot progression.
Yeah, she's carrying Nick and subsequently the audience through like Gatsby's party. There's a point also in the party where Nick and Jordan are talking and they're like dancing separately, or like Jordan is dancing and then Nick is over here and they're like yelling to communicate, and then all of a sudden the party music stops and Nick yells something and Jordan goes geez. So it just like it's just a good interpretation of like the party is so crazy that Nick literally has to yell.
And also, it's showing that Nick is not used to this. Nick is like old money, slow party, rich ballroom dances, and not like, woo, let's throw Rager, let's like scream across the room. He's not used to it.
Yeah, and there's a point towards the end, like the ending of the song, where Jordan is like, want that new money, rich money straight from the goose money, and then she's like, and then she starts talking about, she's like, I don't want that old money, and she's like, comes with strings money, and it's like, that's literally what Nick is. He's literally comes with strings money. Money.
All of his money is attached to his family, so he has to start basically from the bottom up. When he moves to, like, next to Gatsby, he's in between these two massive houses, and he's in this little tiny little place, because he can't use his family money.
So next we go on to For Her, which is Gatsby's first song and his first solo. We get Gatsby's intention is revealed. Like, this is different, divulges from both the book and the movie, where it's Gatsby asking Nick for the favor rather than like asking Jordan to ask Nick. It's Gatsby singing about how much he like wants Daisy and loves Daisy. He goes, I went to war for her, braved foreign shore for her, only to like, he comes back and only to learn that he's lost her, is what he says. And then he says a line, bottled up the guilt, which I think is interesting because it's confirmed that like later in the book and the movie and the musical, he's selling alcohol. He's guilty because it's prohibition.
There's also a line that says, am I chasing a dream? Which could allude to the dream of having Daisy or whatever. It could also allude to the green light. And he's also chasing the dream of being Jay. He's chasing Gatsby. He will never be Gatsby. He's never going to be remembered as Gatsby until Nick wrote this book. Like, he's chasing something unimaginable. And even in For Her, they lean a lot into romance in like the theatrical version because that's what theater is. I don't mind it as much as they did in the movie.
For Her is also just like a beautiful song.
It is very pretty.
It's so good. It feels like a love song, but in the same way, you feel really, really bad for Gatsby in the song. Because only to learn that you have lost her is said multiple times, and it gives me those like tingles you get on your skin when something is particularly emotional. Yeah. And then towards like the end, he says, Gatsby says, just one piece to go, which is like, Daisy is the last thing he needs to be Jay Gatsby. But it's also like alluding to the fact that she's kind of read as more like a puzzle piece to him, to be Jay Gatsby rather than like a person.
Next is Valley of Ashes.
Valley of Ashes, which is chapter 2. in the book.
My favorite note that for some reason I didn't think about until the musical was triggered by this one specific phrase, "I'm seeing green." And my first thought was, that's a phrase. And it is a phrase. Seeing green refers to envy most of the time. For some reason, I never thought about the green part of the green light meaning something. I was like, oh, it's green. It's a green light. I was confused that it was a light, but like, I never thought about the green part. It is envy. It is money. It's the green light represents like his yearning for everything that Tom has. Gatsby wants what Tom has. Tom is successful and he has the girl and he can cheat on the girl and still have the girl. Like, he wants that. He still wants to be more well known than that, but Tom himself is so well known. And Gatsby isn't necessarily chasing Tom, but he's chasing the exact same thing that Tom is.
Myrtle is also in the song briefly, yes. And she's like, dinner's in the icebox. It's the stuff that's not ice. So confirming once again to all of us that Wilson is dumb. And everyone thinks Wilson is dumb, including Tom and Myrtle and anyone Myrtle talks about George too. The next song is My Green Light, which is a duet between Gatsby and Daisy, and it's essentially them, like, rekindling their relationship. Like, it's Gatsby showing her the green light. Like, the first line is, "Can you see through the mist just across the bay? Can you see the green light? Look out this way."
The entire song is just Gatsby and Daisy going back and forth between yes, no, maybe.
Gatsby goes, sometime about the green light, it's like sometimes it's winking, sometimes it's warning, blinking its message and meaning to warning. It's a lighthouse, it's a signal flare, stay back, come quick, move on, stay there. So like, it's like the green light is encapsulating like his insecurities and fears, and like the fact that he knows he shouldn't really be chasing Daisy.
And half of the time it's soothing them, half the time it's making his insecurities even more severe.
And a big line in this is, "If I save you, will you save me too?" From both Gatsby and Daisy. Gatsby, to me, it's like save him from himself, like self-destructing if he does not get Daisy. And Daisy, to me, it's like Jordan at one point in the book and movie and musical goes, Daisy deserves something good in her life, meaning, and it literally, Daisy tells us in Absolute Rose in chapter 1 that she is unhappy. And I believe like she's talking about like her unhappiness when she says, "If I save you, will you save me too?" And Gatsby in this song, like towards the end of his little solo at the beginning, says, "Can you see the green light? It's yours, Daisy Faye." He is using her maiden name.
The musical feels like its own thing, and I think that that's better.
It works better.
It works so much better than the movie adaptation.
The musical is taking artistic liberties for its medium. The movie feels like it's taking artistic liberties, but not for its medium, just because they can.
There's a difference between artistic liberties and just screwing with the English literature.
Just because you can.
Just because you can. And it was very strange. And I know that there's so many different adaptations of The Great Gatsby. It must be hard to do something different and more entertaining. But the way that they did it in the movie was wrong. Simply. Plain and simple.
So the next song is The Past Is Catching Up to Me, and it's basically Gatsby talking about his time 5 years ago with Daisy in Louisville, how they danced with each other, and like one of the last things he remembers with Daisy before he went to fight in the war. And he talks about, "I danced with her 5 years ago in Louisville. I danced with Daisy and time stood still." And he wishes it had stayed still so badly. Like he wants, like we've been saying, he wants to recapture his past. Later, another line is, "One party left to throw, how could she say no?" It's, again, bringing attention to the fact that people are using him for his money, and he's perfectly okay with that as long as Daisy... He expects Daisy to as well, and as long as Daisy is his, he's perfectly okay with that. And it is the last party he throws before he dies. Another line is, "Some will shudder at what I've done or say that I've crossed a line," which is, like, alluding to his, like, gangster gang life and stuff. And there's a point where he says, "One memory survives," which to me reads as Nick is the one memory, because Nick is the one who immortalizes him in this book. And is truly, besides his dad and Owl Eyes, is, like, the only one who will remember Jay Gatsby. To everyone else, like, people who came to his parties, "Oh, that cool guy who threw those parties is dead. Real shame, I really liked the booze." That's basically all Gatsby was to them. The next song we have is "New Money," and... Reprise, sorry. Basically, the entire song is Gatsby's party guests mocking his death and gossiping about him still, and saying he gets shot in his pool, and they say things like, "Poor fool who has to clean that pool. I'm glad it's not my job," and "At least he made a splash." It's also tragic because these people who were using him are just, like, completely mocking his death. And the next song is "Beautiful Little Fool," which is taken from chapter 1 and put as the second to last song in the musical. And it's like, it's Daisy and Nick having one last conversation rather than... I'm pretty sure Tom and Nick also have one last conversation, but, like, they're, like, one last conversation that's also in the book, but Daisy also has one with him in this. It's Daisy talking about what she said to her daughter, like, do you know what I said when my daughter was born? The nurse told me she was a girl, and I was glad, and she says, I'm glad it's a girl, I hope she'll be a beautiful little fool. And in the musical, she says, "Be the fool that I could never be," and it expands on Daisy's unhappiness with Tom, and just unhappiness in general. And towards the end of the song, she says, like, a girl should be perfect and proposed an absolute rose, which is basically her saying, along coupled with, like, "Be the fool that I can never be, ignorance is bliss."
The entire song of "Beautiful Little Fool" is the fact that it's at the end is so much, it feels so much more important than if it was at the beginning, because the way that they've rearranged the chapters so much, it makes Daisy feel... It's the exact same information that we get in the book and in the movie, but it makes her feel so much more in-depth because we're learning all of this at the end. We're only learning this about her after we've seen Gatsby yearn for the perfect version of her that he thinks she is. And at the very end, we find out that she doesn't think that of her. It's after Gatsby's dead, we find out that she thinks she's awful. And it means a lot more, especially for her and Gatsby's relationship.
And then the final is also called "Roaring On." It's Nick singing, and he goes, "With a wild promise I mistook for meaning." It's a retelling, basically, of what Jordan says earlier on, and he talks about how he can still see Gatsby, and why do we keep reaching? Like, what is the meaning? And, like, he talks about, like, Gatsby's green light being kind of his meaning.
It's... The final song is a retelling of all of the events of the musical from Nick's perspective. Before now, it was theater. It was, we are watching the main character Gatsby, and Nick will every once in a while give some commentary, but he's letting this play out for us until the very end, where Nick is giving this final commentary, just like he does in the book, of Gatsby was the one thing that made this feel okay, and it doesn't feel okay without Gatsby.
Yeah. He says, I can see Gatsby standing in silhouette. He's staring down at the darkness, his arms stretching to the sky with infinite hope that made him fool enough to try, which is also like a callback to Beautiful Little Fool a little bit. And it's just Nick talking about, like, in so many words, like, the hopefulness of Gatsby, and that's why Gatsby is still good in his eyes.
Overall, I think the musical, although I don't particularly love all the songs,
It gets the message across better than
Than-
the 2013 movie.
than the 2013 movie ever could. Like,
And it expands on things in the book that I wanted expanded on.
and doesn't belittle the things that were already expanded on.
Yeah.
It's a good balance of both, and it makes sense the way it's told, and it doesn't feel like I'm missing something the entire time. The movie felt like I was missing something the entire time. I'm sure if I had watched it in theaters, or like I didn't have the ability to hit pause over and over again and think about what I was gonna say, I'm sure
Would enjoy it more.
Yeah. I'm sure I would have actually enjoyed it and had more of an experience with it instead of, analyzing it the whole time. But even then, it was very enjoyable, and I think that says a lot about it. Like, even though I was watching a musical for a project, it was still extremely impactful.
That is the final, so that's all we've got, and this is the end of the video, essentially. Quick summary, the book, obviously, it's an American classic, it's great, there's not much to say, really. For us personally, the movie was not it. It just didn't hit the bullet points of the book. As a standalone, it's fine. It's, the camera work is, like, the costumes and the camera work is honestly very impressive for 2013, to be honest.
Yes,
The acting is, like, good if you're not comparing it to the book. And
I love Tobey Maguire.
yeah, and then the musical is so different from the book in a way that is refreshing and not even just digestible, but like good soup. Good food.
The book tells us a story of how Nick joins this rowdy world without knowing what he's getting into, and he joins this whole murder mystery about who is Gatsby, what is Gatsby doing, what is happening with these crazy rich people. Is this worth it? Is the money worth it? Why are we still here? And then eventually he leaves. And it's a telling of Gatsby's life. The movie is just a telling of a fun tale. And if that's all that the Great Gatsby is to you, then that's fine. And then the musical is a series of events of a romance and a deep connection to... It really does touch on the, like, bullet points of old money, new money a lot better than the musical does, and then the movie does. And it's so much more blatant than the book, so if you haven't watched or read any of this, may I suggest, if you just want a fun thing to watch the movie. If you are interested in a really, really good commentary on social wealth and you like songs, musical. And if you want to read a pretty short book,
The book.
the book.
And if you don't want to do any of that, you just watch this video. You don't have to!
Or read the
Congratulations!
Spark Notes.
Alright, well, that's all we got. Bye!
Bye!